Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to the third interview of The Honest Violinist. And today we have Orla McGarrity with us,
Hello.
a long-time friend. So Orla, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern Ireland and I started violin when I was probably around 7. And I started with like traditional Irish music at first and then got lessons in school, kind of standard. And then got a really good teacher. I was really lucky, had a really good teacher. So I got like a really good kind of supported music upbringing, even though like where I'm from doesn't have like a huge music scene, I'd say.
And your parents aren't like musical?
No, they're not. No, they're not music. I think there's music somewhere like way back. But,
yeah, there's always that one relative like in the
yeah,
family.
yeah, there's like a missing violin somewhere along the line. But my sister did a bit of music, but they're like very supportive of just like us both doing what we want to do in life, which is really nice. So yeah.
Oh, cool. So the first question is,
I feel like it used, like until recently, it used to mean something quite different. So I feel like originally I saw it kind of like a means to an end, like I need to go into a room for a certain amount of time and like get this much done, and then that'll help me get to this next point, which then means I'll have the piece nearly learned or whatever. And I didn't really find like enjoyment, and it was a productive practice to be honest as well. I think more recently I'm trying to like go into a practice room and make like everything I do in there about being comfortable and about being calm, because a lot of my practice like have been quite like intense and like frustrated, and it wasn't productive, because then if I get nervous in a performance and you pair that with like having done some quite like strained practice, obviously nothing good is going to come of that.
So you would say that practice is basically practicing feeling comfortable, and like that's something that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think like I did a really interesting workshop with this guy called Mike Cunningham, who's like just incredible, but he talks about like everything being like the most musical way you can do it as possible, even when you're practicing, because even if you're practicing like scales and it's really metronomic and just, you know, just to like get the notes in the right place, then if you have like a scalic passage in music, like you're not benefiting yourself if you've only ever practiced things like that in a certain way that's very like one-dimensional.
Yeah. So the next question is,
deadlines are like really, I kind of work well under pressure but also not well. Like it forces me to get things done, but then the way that I practice isn't productive. So I think like if I have like, for example, we have recitals coming up obviously.
Those things.
and I keep panicking that I'm not close enough to where the rep should be. So then that inhibits a lot of my practice sessions at the moment. I'm like trying to stay calm and be like musical and all the things I just talked about. But at the back of my head I'm like, but you should be able to play this by now. So I think that's normally like deadlines kind of do that to me. And just like, I mean, I feel like it's kind of lame. It's not an excuse, but like the generation that we live in, I feel like there are just like more distractions, and like I think our attention spans are shorter than they should be. So I think like a big pitfall for me is like maintaining that concentration and knowing when to say actually enough's enough. You're not getting productive work done, because often I'll like work myself out. I'll be like, no, I need to do another hour, I need to do another 2 hours or whatever, and then I get really worked up if things aren't happening the way I want them to, and then it becomes quite negative and it's counterproductive anyway. So yeah, those are the big two.
So
I feel like there's a right answer.
There's a right answer and then there's the answer that I do.
I mean, I feel like it's bad. I do listen to recordings. I feel like some people are like, no, never listen to recordings, but I do. I always I'm trying more now to listen to a variety of recordings. I think I'm like the number one person for like kind of sifting through them, being like, oh, I love this one, and then listening to it until it's like, got me.
So getting like inspiration from different recordings.
Yeah, because even if you don't like them, listening to them more than just like to the point of you don't like something. Obviously there could be other things you do like, but even if you decide, oh, I just really don't like this interpretation, you're still gonna learn, because you're gonna be like, okay, well, I don't like that. And I do try, like, I'm so bad at this, but I'm trying more now to do like practice just looking at the score. I like having recordings on as well, because I find it really hard to hear a part in my head just staring at a score. We're so lucky to have access to recordings.
Yeah,
and I do think it's so helpful. Like, obviously, as I said, you don't want to become like obsessive over one, but as well, I feel like quite often, if I've started a piece and I've chosen it because I like know it already and I like it, then I'll just get the music and try. I was going to say bash through it. I'll try.
No, but I think that's a legitimate thing to do when you first, because the more ground you cover, the more comfortable you feel with it like later on, and you'll be like, oh, I remember like playing this bit. Yeah,
especially if you can. Obviously, it helps you identify areas that might need more time and work. You'll probably already know what they're going to be anyway.
Yeah.
But also, I think it puts it in perspective. Like, if you can kind of get through a piece, you know the general geography, so you're not just starting from the start and like working through it phrase by phrase, and like you never have played the end.
So it gives you more of a place to kind of know where you're going. But, absolutely. Oh, cool. So assuming you've done all of this practicing and like all that stuff, and you're coming up to a performance,
I would love to be able to memorize better, and I'd love to not rely on music as much, but I think your intentions have to be right. So like, my intentions are always terrible, because it's always like, okay, I know most of this from memory, but I'm like a month from my recital, and really I should have like, you know, it should be more comfortable or more solid or whatever. So those intentions are bad, because then I feel like I get into the cycle of, okay, I'm going to repeat this page 20 times and then play it without the music, and then you're kind of, I feel like I always am just getting over hurdles in my head, like, okay, I got that bit, now I can get to the next bit, and that comes across, like when I watch recordings of myself back, I can see that I'm thinking about the next bit's coming on.
You're not like in the moment, like just enjoying it.
I think something that would really help, that I'm not very good at, is like, if you get a bit deeper into like the structure and the form of the piece, and like really knowing if there's other parts, if there's a piano or whatever. But I think small chunks and like working in patterns always helps, that kind of thing. And not being overwhelmed by the grand scheme of things. But I think if it's going to inhibit your like freedom when you play, then maybe just have it there on like a low stand or whatever. Even in like sonatas and stuff where it's kind of more commonplace to have music, like obviously it's a partnership with the pianist as well, so you don't want to be glued to your score. So that's unhealthy. And like, maybe there's ways you can, and maybe it's a confidence thing as well. Some people
definitely
like bury themselves in the music because they're like self-conscious, or I've definitely done that before when you're not so confident with something. So maybe that could be a nice thing to think about in your practice, is maybe like practicing performing more, even if it's just to yourself, but in
like
the practice
performing
room.
to friends and stuff like that before a big performance.
And then there might be places where you're like, oh, okay, I keep having memory slips there, or maybe a random one will happen. I feel like that's more common when you're just in that state of like heightened adrenaline in a performance. Random memory slip, but you just kind of have to move on.
Exactly. No one's going to remember that in like a week's time.
You didn't remember it clearly.
So and then the next question is,
got here, it was like so, it was bad to the point of like laughable. Like now looking back at myself, I'm like, what? Because I inhibited my own progress by being like scared of like practicing too loud, like next door to people, like thinking who would be listening, like that kind of just, it seems so ridiculous now. So then that transferred into obviously a more kind of formal environment when you're actually performing, and that's just kind of continued. Like I'm definitely a lot better now than I was, and I think one thing to like that's helped me assessing the expectation that you put on yourself from like a certain performance. So say you're doing your recital and you might be like, everyone might be thinking, okay, like I want to do the music justice, but I also want to do like get an okay mark. And then on top of that, I would normally be thinking, I have to prove to everyone that, like, you know, they don't get to hear me play a lot. This is my chance to prove to everyone I deserve to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to really wow everyone. And then normally it goes the opposite direction, because that's so much extra pressure.
Yeah.
And like, even when you go into like auditions or anything, like the panel always, like they don't have any preconceived notion about you.
Yeah.
So anything that you put on yourself is like just coming from you and not from them.
Yeah.
Which is like such a weird, it's so true, but it's such like a difficult thought to like process, that when you go in, they're not thinking, oh, I know they struggle when they get to the second page, so I'm gonna be waiting.
Yeah.
Like they want you to do your best.
That is something so hard to like push out of your mind, because whenever one analyzes their thoughts before going and doing a performance or a recital or anything, it's kind of like all of these things that are so, they mean nothing.
Yeah.
But in your own mind, they're so big.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then you feel silly afterwards that you even thought of these things beforehand.
Yeah, and then it puts like a lot of pressure on that one occasion that passes so quick. I used to really panic when I felt like I'd wake up the morning of something with like nervous tummy, sweaty hands, like, you know, you're cold, you're shaky, and that I preempt feeling like that, and then when it came it was even worse. And like, but if you kind of prepare and think, okay, I know those things might happen, and then those feelings will come, then at least you're like mentally prepared, and it's not like another layer of, this is like this is gonna ruin it even more, and then you can like start to tackle those feelings a bit.
And I think with that, you kind of have to like practice that. Like practice your deep breathing, or practice acceptance, and practice, you know, like I don't think you can expect to wake up on your recital day and be like, right, I'm going to do this breathing exercise now that I've never done before, and
that's the
like
thing,
expect it to work.
Even that, like, it might have like short-term benefits, but it'll feel unfamiliar, and just that feeling of it not being something that you do on the regular. So you definitely have to practice what you're going to feel like then, and how you're going to try and like bring yourself back.
Cool. No, it's really interesting. So
I think there'd like I'd need to have like quite a wide, like a diverse career, and I'd like to be playing like different kinds of music, and I feel like I really have an input, and at the moment I feel like I'm not at a place where I'm comfortable and confident enough with my playing that's something that I would be thinking about maybe in the future. I could like,
well, you're going on to do a master's anyway,
so maybe like during
buying a little bit more time.
Exactly. Anytime I can that. But I think ultimately I'd love to have like a mixed career. I definitely want to be performing, like, I love orchestral music, but I love chamber music, and I think I also love kind of community music making, and I'd like to definitely go into a bit more teaching and workshopping and that kind of thing.
Like outreach stuff.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of the like big orchestras now, like especially in Manchester, they all have kind of community music projects that they do, so maybe that's something.
Cool.
watching.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely more, I think, the word I want to go for.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and then the last question.
Actually, this is so weird because I was thinking about this yesterday. I was going to do geography or like earth science. Well, I was going to do earth sciences at uni until I realised, I mean, it's in the title, earth science, but like, it's actually quite scientific. But I preferred the physical side of geography to the human stuff.
Oh yeah, the human stuff is just like anything.
Yeah, statistics.
Yeah. Maths.
Yeah, but I like geology and like that kind of thing. Yesterday I was actually thinking about this and I started listening to a geology podcast and I was like, wow, like I definitely couldn't have done this for a degree. So you never know.
So you know, my career change.
Yeah, quick career change. I'll become a geographer.
Yeah, oh my god.
But yeah, that's what I probably would have been doing, struggling through.
Yeah.
Imagine. But yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk about all of this stuff, and yeah, well, hopefully we'll upload very soon, and yeah. Great.
Cool.